I didn't say it today at the end of meditation, but I often say, may you move through this day with mindfulness and ease. I remember the first time I heard that, it was powerful for me. And I've really hung on to it ever since. And it's really important to have an intention like this, right? It's an intention. So I can tell you that in the morning when I finish my meditation, I will go through my metta phrases to remind me what I'm about, right? May I be safe. May I be content. May I be healthy. And may I move through this day, please, with some mindfulness and ease. May I please do that. So I've set myself an intention. And it's important to set an intention because nothing else really follows until you've done that. So great. So I'm like, okay, great. That's my intention. And something that always fascinates me, I'm always chewing on this, is, but how do I actually do that? That's a wonderful intention. So how do I do it? And I am the eternal toolbox carrier. And I was thinking about it, maybe it's because my dad was a carpenter. Maybe that's why that metaphor is always top of mind. I always like to say I'm a nuts and bolts person. I need me some nuts and bolts in order to get this job done. Because if you think about it, I mean, have you ever seen someone change the tire on their car without a socket wrench? I mean, have you seen that happen? Or like, unclog the toilet without a plunger? Or even like, scramble your eggs without a fork, or if you're camping, a little stick. Like, you need your tools. So I'm an internal collector of these tools. And so I wanted to share one with you from a couple weeks ago. And I find that these tools, boy, if you're looking for them, you can find them everywhere. And some tool that's going to really work for you is not going to fit in my hand so well, and vice versa. But there are some universal ones that do actually serve most of us. And so this idea of staying mindful throughout the day, may I move through this day with mindfulness and ease. I got a new tool the other day I wanted to share with you, so here it is. So I'm guessing most of you have these phones, and even though they're occasionally a scourge to our existence, something that I use for cooking a lot is the timer, right? I'm like, hey Siri. Well, I bet if I say it now, yeah, he's woken up. Good God. I'll say, hey Siri, set me a timer for 12 minutes for my beans.
You need to unlock your iPhone first.
I swear he's always listening. So, do you notice he has an Indian voice? I set that up on my Siri. It's pretty funny. So, I guess, so last week I was having difficulty because I'd get to the end of every day and I'd say, well, how, was I mindful today? How much mindfulness did I have? Can I quantify this? Like what happened today? And I was getting really frustrated because it's one of those phases where I'd plowed my way through the day. And of course there is mindfulness. We are able to, but there wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. And so I set myself a goal for the following week. Let me just do 10 minutes a day. Let me just have me 10 good minutes. if I can get me 10 minutes of doing something mindfully, I'm going to be okay. So I set I'm not going to say it now, I set the thing for 10 minutes and put it in my pocket, and then went off to do some task that is a bit mindless. Say it's folding the laundry. So I set my intention there, put on the timer, put it in my pocket, and was like, oh yeah, look at folding this fabric is soft. I see these nice colors. This room is warm. And before you know it, zoop, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. The timer goes off. Oh, wait a second. Well, luckily I found it has a little button that says repeat. So I hit repeat. I'm like, I can do this. Do it again. All right, keep folding. I got a lot of laundry. Looking, feeling, breathing, staying with my present moment experience. And ended up, honestly, for the last couple of weeks, hitting repeat like 3 or 4 times before I felt like I'd had enough of that satisfying mindfulness. And you feel it when you do that. You feel well. You know what it feels like when you're with the thing that you're doing. You know the difference. When you're there and you're not being pulled into something in the past, you're not daydreaming, you're not thinking about some plan. When you're actually with the activity that you're doing, you feel the difference and it feels good. There's something about it that's grounding. It's like being at home. So we have to collect these tools. And I think one of the questions is why do we need tricks like this? Like, if we know it's so good, why do we have to trick ourselves and fill up a toolbox with these playthings? And I would argue that the reason we need this stuff is because the world comes at you, and it's a lot of it not helpful. Your mind comes at you, and a lot of that isn't helpful. And we're habituated into a state of fear a lot of the times, and that is not helpful. We need to understand what fear is to inform us, but when we become trapped in a cycle of fearful thinking, it is no longer helpful. It does not serve us. So we have our tools and we practice our mindfulness. Now, the Buddha would say, and I tend to agree, we'll see what you think, that this is not enough. The capacity for mindfulness is essential, and you feel it, and it's not enough. You also need what for today, I'm going to label it as spiritual accomplishment. What? I'll explain. On Sunday, I went to a memorial service. I didn't get to go in person because I was getting over that flu. But my angels sent me a text with the Zoom link, and I got to Zoom in. And the memorial service was for a dear friend who has been part of this group for a few years. Margaret Andrews. I'm sure many of you remember Margaret. She was in Practicum 5, which was a particularly robust class. And she was in the original Sangha, the Spiritual Friends group. And I'm sure they miss her, as do I. And at this memorial service, we got to hear people's comments on Margaret. And we got to hear the comments kind of informally and formally. So informally, they had put the laptop in the corner somewhere. And so we overheard people. They didn't know we were listening to them. Like being a fly on a wall, we were actually flies on the wall, the few of us who were in that Zoom room, which was beautiful, just hearing people sharing memories. And then we got to hear eulogies, meaning people courageously got up and shared some words about Margaret, their memories, things that they remembered, important things about her that you'd want to remember. You know, this is part of the grieving process. It's part of the healing process. And it's not just about Margaret, right? It's about us too. We're honoring her, and these eulogies that we share and that we listen to are for us, because they help us reflect on our own lives. Right? Because when you go to a memorial service, it's pretty natural to wonder what people might say about you when it's your turn. So when it's my turn, what are my friends and family going to reflect upon? And this is super helpful. It informs our life. It helps us to stay on the track that we most dearly want to be on. And it reminds me of whenever I go to a memorial service, it reminds me of this book by David Brooks called The Road to Character. Maybe you're familiar with it, maybe not. In this book, I'll read a blurb, a synopsis of the book. You don't need to read it, just listen for the next 30 seconds. He talks about resume virtues versus eulogy virtues. So we can have these virtues that look good on the resume, and then we can have these virtues that we want to have show up on our eulogy. In The Road to Character, David Brooks argues that true fulfillment emerges not from individual achievement and success, but from cultivating humility, self-restraint, and a commitment to something greater than ourselves. He contends that modern society has become overly focused on the pursuit of individual desires and external validation over nurturing an inner ethical foundation. An inner ethical foundation, like that groundedness that you can come home to. You can say, yes, this is the way. This is the way. So for me, I look for ethical foundation. I think one of the most beautiful resources for that are some of the Buddha's teachings. He has such a helpful way of framing things up. There's many different ways to find an ethical foundation. This is just one of many. But I want to share with you today what I've called in the past the three poisons. The three poisons. And this is from the Mula Sutta, It's the roots, the sutta about roots. And I'll share it with you. Maybe I'll put it on the screen. Let me share the screen. There we go. All right. Can you see that? You don't need to see that. I'll read it. But if you like to look at things, there it is. So the Mula Sutta is about the 3 poisons. And I'll share with you. So the 3 poisons are hatred, greed, and delusion. Greed, hatred, and delusion, or greed, aversion, and delusion. This 3 energies, greed being our wants, our desires, like our need, or when we kind of latch into something and we can't let go of it. We want it. And whether it's the cookie or to be right or whatever it is. That's the greed. It's that energy of pulling towards us. Hatred or aversion is when we resist the reality of something. We don't want it to be that way. It can't be that way. It's the movement away. And then delusion is being lost in a cloud. So Buddha says, monks, there are these 3 roots of what is unskillful. Which 3? Greed, aversion, and delusion. Greed itself is unskillful. Aversion itself is unskillful. Hatred, aversion, and delusion itself is unskillful. And so then he goes on to say, well, what does that look like? A person like this is called one who speaks at the wrong time, says what's unfactual, says what's irrelevant. And why? Why is that a problem? Because they've wrongly inflicted suffering on another person. They've wrongly inflicted suffering on themselves, and they've wrongly inflicted suffering on another person. When told what's factual, they deny it, don't acknowledge. When told what's unfactual, they don't make an effort to untangle it. A person like this, he goes on, with the mind overcome with these unskillful qualities of greed, aversion, and delusion, that person dwells in suffering right in the here and now. That person feels threatened, turbulent, feverish. And after death can expect a bad destination. That's if you believe in the cycles of karma. But never mind that. In the here and now, a person who is caught up in greed, aversion, and delusion is not feeling it. And then he shares a metaphor. It's just like a sal tree or a birch tree or an aspen tree that's been smothered and surrounded by parasitic vines. These are the 3 roots of what are unskillful. And now because it's the Buddha, he always flips it around and shares with us that there are 3 roots of what is skillful. What 3 roots? Lack of greed, lack of hatred, lack of delusion. Lack of greed itself is skillful. Lack of hatred and aversion is skillful. Lack of delusion is skillful. A person like this is one who speaks at the right time, speaks what is factual, speaks what is relevant. And they've not inflicted suffering on another person. When told what's factual, they acknowledge it and don't deny it. When told what's unfactual, they make an ardent effort to untangle it. In a person like this, unskillful qualities have been abandoned, their root destroyed, made like a palmyra stump, deprived of the conditions of development, not destined for future arising. He dwells in ease, right in the here and now. He dwells in ease, feeling unthreatened, unfeverish. Just as if there were a sal tree or a birch or an aspen smothered by 3 parasitic vines, a man would come along carrying a spade and basket. He would cut the vines at the root. He would dig them out. He would pull them out. He would cut the stalks of the vines. He would slice them into splinters, pound them into bits, dry them in the wind and sun, burn them in a fire, reducing them to ash and washing them away in a flowing stream. And that way, these parasitic vines, greed, hatred, and delusion, would at their root be destroyed. In the same way, a person like this, evil, unskillful qualities born of greed, aversion, and delusion have been abandoned, the root destroyed, deprived of the conditions of development. He dwells in ease, right in the here and now. These are the 3 roots of what is skillful. The Mulla Sutta, some guidance for us on how to move through this day with mindfulness and ease. So it's very important to pair, like a fine wine, we pair our mindfulness activities, coming back to the present moment, with this ethical foundation that's very much within our grasp. I'll end with 2 quotes. No, I'll end with this one quote. This came from another memorial that we went to. My cousin, his little brother, was murdered in Iran for not saving someone. He was a cardiologist and he wasn't able to save someone, and that person's relative came back and took revenge on him with his life. And so, does it matter what I do when things are happening in the world and we feel so helpless? Does it matter what I do? Does it matter? And our cousin, who gave such a moving eulogy, encouraged us to not take the hatred and aversion that might well up and allow that to grow. He encouraged us to continue on the good path. Anyway, he read this quote from Rumi. You may have heard of it. Rumi writes, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. So what you do matters so much. What you do matters so much. Your thoughts, your speech, your action.